Nicholas,
Joseph.
we're back, and we're in a very special location. Is this the first on location cold cans we've ever done?
I think it might be.
Oh my!
Other than our camping trip or whatever, our cabin.
Oh
trip.
yeah, we did one in the cabin trip. I don't remember much of that.
First
one,
on
to be
location
frank.
in Seattle.
Have we ever even told the story about the cabin trip and how
sick we got?
We can save that for a different.
Yeah.
And that was that night that we did this cold can. We're at a very special location with a very special returning guest to the show, drinking a very special beer.
We'll see about that, Joe.
The beer itself can be special regardless of how much we like it. We are in the abode of Zach Jabal. Thank you, Zach, for both having us and being on the show.
You are very welcome, and I think you should thank my wife, Caitlin, for frying cheese curds.
That was
making you feel almost too at home, I gotta say.
Right, yeah. You're not going to get us out of here. We do have a plate of, hot fried cheese curds in front of us on this table.
Yeah, if the show sounds distracted at all, you all can empathize if that plate of cheese curds is in front of us.
Now, no eating on mic, though.
Oh,
We will keep that instituted. No eating on mic.
Nicholas.
There is a mute knob on your microphones. Use it if you need to.
I'll use the mute knob.
I feel like Joey's nickname in high school was Mute Knob. I'm just assuming.
He didn't start talking until he went to college.
Yeah, that's right. The cold cans was actually the first words I spoke was episode 1. Should we take the first
I don't
sip?
think you actually said what the beer
I don't think
was.
we did. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I was going to kind of try to do it like... I was going to figure out a way to do it, and then I just got excited. I told you the cheese curds are on the table. It's going to be a distracted episode.
They were.
This is the oldest operating brewing company in America, established in 1829 and still family-owned. I learned that from our lovely host and guest on the show. We're drinking an East Coast staple, Yuengling's traditional lager today on the show.
Cheers.
Cheers. See, now that's good.
It's a nice sip.
Yeah.
It's good because as like a staple of a beer, in the Midwest, what is it? Hams, Splats, Liney's. Liney's is good. But I just feel like, you're getting a lot of kind of...
Does that ruin the point you were trying to make?
Yeah, it absolutely steps on the point I was trying to make.
Splats and hams.
Okay, so but this is like an amber lager that feels like it's a touch... There's a touch of taste that you don't
amber
get
lager.
No, enough. You've never even had a joke with that ever before.
That's why it's great, Joe.
No, yeah, that's why
people love it.
People love it. There's good taste to it. There's good flavor for a beer that's, ubiquitous over there.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why when I was in college, this was a beer that I drank a lot of is it's
in college on the East Coast, right?
Yes, yeah, in New York. So pretty reasonably priced, not your absolute cheapest beer, but definitely affordable, widely available. And yeah, the sweetness that you get from the amber malt in here is definitely sets it apart from a lot of the kind of macro lagers that you find throughout a lot of the rest of the country. And even like another kind of classic central Pennsylvania beer like Rolling Rock, which I also drink a lot of. But like Rolling Rock, I mean, no slander to the folks at Rolling Rock, but like Rolling Rock tastes gross.
Yeah,
it does.
Like I drank a lot of it because it was really cheap, but it's not good. And Yuengling is good. And I remember especially there was a place, we're tripping down memory lane here with me when I was in college. We had a place that we used to go to called Phoebe's that had 10-cent wing nights on Wednesday nights, which, I mean, in the middle of Manhattan, 10-cent anything was basically like... I don't even know how now I think about it, it staggers the mind to think about what they possibly were serving us.
My goodness,
but it was like, but there was a 2-drink minimum.
Some type of bird, maybe not chicken wings.
I mean, I don't know, pigeon, I guess. There are a lot of those. And it was a 2-drink minimum and Yuengling was one of the, always on draft. And so there were a lot of nights where I had some multiple of 10 wings and some multiple of 2
10 Yuenglings?
Well, I don't know if I ever got it quite to 10, but and so it's a very memorable flavor and one that I mean, being here now in Seattle, I almost never get because it never arrives here. It's not distributed on the West Coast, but the fine folks at the brewery sent me these beers, so I'm sure they'd be glad to know that we are drinking them and talking about them on
That's
this
right. We're
far more popular podcast than mine.
Would they
We're
be glad to
spreading the
know?
gospel on Cold Cans podcast.
Yeah,
we did just get another plate of cheese curds, by the way, from
the
Caitlin.
distraction. I mean, we'll be back in an hour.
It will not take you an hour to eat those cheese curds, I'm pretty
true.
sure.
We'll be back.
11 seconds.
The nap afterwards.
Yeah, I'll just be filling a little bit of time before they're gone. I did a terrible job introducing Zach because I assumed that Cold Cans Nation is well acquainted with his story.
Every listener we've had has listened to
certainly
all
heard it.
127.
So I should
Probably just the
episodes.
3 I've been on.
Yeah, that's true.
I should-
Big Jabal stands on the Cold Cans Nation.
Oh, I know we can't. Enough with the Jabal stands. We've heard enough. He's here. All right, we got you what you wanted. No, but you're a man with a professional palate and a host of the Vine Pair podcast.
Ooh, Vine Bear. I'm intrigued now. I feel like I don't know that we're maybe some merch opportunities are occurring to me now.
See, this is what I'm here for.
Thank you.
My verbal stumbles.
Yeah,
But-
he's drank. I can assure you, no more than a third of that beer.
You don't know how much I've drank today, though.
That's true.
My
The
dear
Bucks
boy.
did win a basketball game, so I imagine
They did. Go Bucks, go.
Go Bucks.
Host of the Vine Pair podcast, a man with a professional palate is what I meant to say. That's tough to get out, but I did.
You did. You did a great job.
Thanks, guys.
And what other episodes were you on? You were on Grolsch?
We did. So my first ever episode with you guys was Delirium Tremens.
That's right.
Yeah.
You brought us, you
hashtag
introduced
number
us.
2.
Yes.
And then I was on Grolsch, and then Caitlin and I joined you for we did Fremont Summer Ale.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
Which you both, actually the 3 of you panned.
Yeah.
I was alone in liking.
I'm still not a summer ale guy, but I'll give it another shot this year as the weather warms.
That was also like deep pandemic. Like we
Right.
had one microphone between the two of. I felt bad going back and listening to it because it was definitely. I mean, not the highest quality professional audio that you guys usually
People
achieve.
are used to.
Yeah,
Cold
it's but again, the Jabal stands out there. They don't let us enough.
Yeah, that's the deep album cut that only the true stands appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the Grolsch episode, Caitlin had provided us with some pretzel rolls,
That's
if I remember
true.
correctly.
my goodness.
Pretzel bites, I believe.
Pretzel
and
bites,
some, and
yeah.
some mustard and pimento cheese dip.
That's right.
She comes through with the Wisconsin
heart.
treats from time to time.
The
Wonderful.
endless generosity. Thank you again.
She's now eating the cheese curds herself.
She
so,
toasted
yeah.
a cheese curd toward us.
One question that came to mind when you were telling about your college days with Yuengling, was there a difference for you on draft versus cans and bottles and whatnot?
That's a good question. I feel like the majority of the time I had it was on draft, and then if I had it other than that, it was bottles. And we're drinking out of cans, and I don't know that there's an appreciable difference. But yeah, I think it was a draft beer or a bottled beer for me. And I think more often draft, because weirdly too, this is dating myself here, but like in the early to mid 2000s in New York, there was actually kind of a paucity of like more local craft breweries. Like Brooklyn Brewery was out, and that was like a big deal. But I mean that and like Magic Hat, which is I think in Vermont or New Hampshire or something, was like also ubiquitous. But like Yuengling was the thing you would find that wasn't Bud, Miller, Coors basically, and so it was all over New York City, and people drank a lot of it. I assume to some extent they still do, but I think some of that has been replaced as New York itself has gotten many more craft breweries. But it's been a long time since I lived there.
Okay.
Yeah, is New York known for a craft brewery scene at all? Or at least New York
Well,
City.
if you listen to the Vine Pair or Vine Bear podcast,
I've been listening to Vine Bear this whole time, and it makes a lot of sense now.
yeah. My co-hosts talk a lot about beer in the area because obviously they're based in New York,
Sure.
and so they have a lot more experience. I will say, like, one of the things that was always prohibitive, especially in Manhattan, but even in other parts of the city, is space is expensive, and not that brewing is the most space intensive thing, but you have to have equipment, and so there was, especially in Manhattan, there were not and still are not more than maybe 2 or 3 breweries. Again, it's just kind of like never been, New York, if you think about it, especially Manhattan again, is like this fascinating vacuum for everything consumable, right? Like it all flows in there because, I mean, the city itself and Manhattan in particular, like there's nothing is grown or made or whatever.
Oh, sure.
Raised there.
The concrete jungle.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
Big Apple.
Yeah,
They do grow apples there. That's right.
Surprisingly, a lot of orchards, but other than that, yeah.
Yeah. It's always confusing.
And the Central Park squirrels.
Yes, exactly. Good eating, good wings.
Yeah.
I do remember my last or most recent trip to New York. In Brooklyn, there seemed to be some
Hey,
concentration
I'm walking
of.
here.
Yeah,
what they
I'm
would say
walking here
there.
to the craft brewery down the street.
It's actually the name of the brewery is I'm walking here.
brewing.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
But you did discover some good craft beer in Brooklyn?
Yeah, upon your co-host of the Vine Bear podcast, Adam Teeter's recommendation.
Yeah.
The Brooklyn. I do not remember the names of them, but was wondering if you had been to any of them before.
I haven't.
Okay.
I think that what you see, I mean, again, a thing that's distinct about, again, dating myself at the time I lived in New York versus now, there's much more kind of cutting edge stuff happening in Brooklyn to some extent, also in like even in Queens. Okay. And so that, you know, the if you think about like, again, grounding it here in Seattle, if you think about the places in Seattle where there are a lot of breweries, Ballard, you know, in Fremont, and other parts of the city as well, you know, they're places that were industrial that are
converted.
becoming more residential. And the same is sort of true for these areas in Brooklyn and whatnot that were, I mean, New York's always had more just residential, you know, pockets all over the place because, you know, there's just lots of people there. But a lot of what you've seen is these sort of, you know, either post-industrial or like sort of still a little bit of industrial production of things. But now it's like instead of a place where they make, you know, belts or something, it's a place where they make beer or, or bitters or, you know, someone's making kombucha. Like that stuff is what's in those spaces. And that's just gonna, you know, that's gonna be, you know, it's, I mean, again, I guess we're talking gentrification, but it's also just kind of like, it's a different vibe. And again, when I was there, I was also a college student. So like, again, you know, what did I do? I wasn't going out to Brooklyn to check out the cool breweries. Like we were drinking beers in our dorm rooms or apartments or whatever. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think it's got a pretty vibrant scene, but it's also like I think beer is weird because there's such a disconnect between in a lot of places where the ingredients come from and where the beer is made, because it's just sort of like it can be that way. And so I think some of the greatest breweries can be in New York City, even if they're working with grain from who knows where and hops from, you know, Washington State and all that stuff. So it is more possible that a place can catch up quickly when it comes to making beer in a way that with other things, maybe they just couldn't if they hadn't had sort of a long tradition.
So yeah, logistics and distribution to that area is possible, but there's the space isn't. But like you said, like Queens and Brooklyn, there's I guess a little more space. Obviously Manhattan, you're not going to open a craft brewery.
I mean, there are one or two.
Oh, okay.
In part because people have sort of recognized the other thing that's true about craft breweries, right? And you guys know this and you know, either have experienced it relatively recently or at least can remember it in the dim pre-pandemic past. Like part of the appeal of a craft brewery, wherever it is in bringing people together and being a sort of source of community and not just a source of beer. And so there's lots and lots of people in Manhattan. And so having a few breweries that can offer that within, you know, on Manhattan, so that people who want that experience don't have to go to Brooklyn or Queens or the Bronx or whatever. There are a few, but yeah, it's very expensive and you kind of have to have the right, you know, got to be able to bring in a lot of people and sell a lot of beer to make that financially make sense.
Yeah.
By the way, I looked them up. Threes Brewing and Other Half Brewing are the two in Brooklyn.
They're the ones Adam talks about all the time.
Right.
Threes and Other
So if you're
Half,
ever in Brooklyn, check those out.
Old friend of mine, best man in my wedding, is moving out to New York.
That's right.
Between now and the end of the year at some point for a job, and that's very exciting. So when he listens, as he inevitably will, he'll go check out
Big
Threes.
Jabal stan.
He's part of the Jabal, cabal, and
He's going. Yeah, that's why he's moving to New York. He knew the background of Zach there.
Trying to retrace his steps.
Yeah, a mecca of sorts.
He's going to look for all those 10-cent wings that no longer exist.
He's going to be pissed off.
Knowing him, he will search out 10-cent wings,
and he'll be sick.
Very sick.
Coming back to the Yuengling,
yes,
I could see this being one that you just drive down. You know, one where you kind of come ambling out of the bedroom on a Sunday morning, and you see a bunch of half full Yuenglings, and you're like, oh, I can't even fucking look at the Yuengling. That's kind of what this beer screams to me, but it tastes good. I think that's, I guess, again, what I keep coming back to. Everything we drank in the Midwest, the staples, didn't taste like this because we weren't drinking Leinenkugels. It wasn't as accessible, I would say, as Yuengling because of we didn't have any fucking money. And I really like that. So I'm jealous of that availability that you guys have out there with this particular beer. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's sometimes one of those beers where you just kind of go like, it does exactly what it set out to do, which is deliver like a little bit more of that sort of, again, amber malt flavor than you would get in a traditional kind of macro lager or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's not going to give you much in the way of hops. It's not going to give you, it's not a particularly complex beer, but it's also not aiming to be.
Yeah, but then again, like I feel like I've had a lot of either amber lagers or amber lager adjacent. I saw the little glint in your eye. Adjacent beers out here, on tap where I'm paying $8, and it more or less tastes like this. Like this has enough flavor to get by. If this was called, Bill's fucking red,
Bill's Bear.
Yeah.
But I think thinking back to the Wisconsin and Blee, that was the amber lager, right?
Yes.
That was the one we had.
Amber.
Yes, amber hardly lager.
There's nothing there.
Crowd's going wild right now.
I know. You should put bumpers in, much like Oreo Man, the video you created.
Yes, Cold Cans Heads No.
It's sort
Check
of
it out on
taking
the
the
YouTube
internet by storm.
Yes,
sort of a viral sensation. Like
is.
Charlie bit my finger. But keep going.
I mean, this tastes roughly like that. And to your point, that Wisconsin and Blee ale or whatever is probably much more expensive than this. Probably, at least 30% more.
Yeah.
And so
It's
this
their
just
premium
checks
thing.
Yeah, exactly. Checks all the boxes it needs to, and has a cool backstory as well.
Did we burn bridges with the Drink Wisconsin and Blee company? Didn't they get mad at us about something?
I think they did. They sent us a little pithy Instagram message that was like, if you guys are looking for any real facts about our brewery, like hit us up. We'll be on the show
deal
or
with
whatever.
that? I mean, we will hit you up if you want to be on the show, but what the fuck?
I think it was
we
because
don't know what
we
we're talking
were
about.
I know. Well, yeah, that's what they were. At least they
They've
listen.
clearly never listened to the podcast.
Right, yeah. I listened to that one, thought they were going to get an act of journalism or something,
Yeah.
and it is not that. I think it was that whole thing we were doing about the T-shirts.
Yeah.
So
this is a brand.
Oh no, I listened to the episode.
Did you
okay.
listen? Okay.
I'm not. I don't think I didn't go back and re-listen to the deep catalog when I started listening at some point after meeting Nick, and then some point after he like produced a number or was the engineer for a number of Vine Bear podcast episodes. He sort of let slip that he had a beer podcast, and I was like, it seems like a thing you could have told me before, but
He's a modest man.
I think he just assumed I had to know.
Midwesterner.
He's like, oh, you mean, come on.
Yeah, you haven't heard of it?
He's
Everyone
not just
knows.
a Nick Patry, he's that Nick Patry. So yeah, but I definitely listened to the Drink Wisconsin and Blee.
Yeah. It's a fine company. You're
Yeah.
fine if you're fucking still listening. You have the one slogan, you made a whole enterprise on it. We talked about the Bucks game. The Bucks are playing in a playoff series
Bucks.
right now, the first round playoff series against the Miami Heat. And they were doing some like B-reel footage outside the Pfizer Forum, the Bucks arena. And the Drink Wisconsin Blee has a store there. And they were selling merch.
Good
and
for
it was
them.
like front and center in this B-reel while Marv Albert talked about CarMax. And that's like a big moment for them.
That's
And
pretty
they got
huge.
mad at us on social media. That's pretty nice.
Yeah, Cold Cans has really made
Yeah,
it.
you were basically on TNT.
Yeah, Marv Albert
congrats.
knows us.
Yeah.
Marv Albertsons.
That's right. Hey,
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I actually have met his son Kenny a few times because Kenny is
Oh, right.
an NYU, like me, an NYU
Oh,
alum,
that's
and
cool.
was on many years before me. Did sports radio at NYU,
Nice.
and so he was kind enough to come in a couple times and appear on the radio show that I was one of the hosts of. He's a very nice guy.
That's
pretty
a
cool.
staple. He's an absolute rock
Of
solid
Sundays.
staple.
Well, well, he does every sport. I think he's the only. I feel like I read this not that long ago. He's like the only broadcaster who's done some number of like MLB, NBA, NFL, and NHL games. Like he does
Really?
it all.
Wow.
Yeah, he does them all.
It
or
makes
has done
sense.
them all.
He's just kind of that classic professional kind
Yeah.
of vibe. Like
Kenny Moose and Goose. The
Kenny
old
Moose and
tag
Goose.
team.
And I swear this was not planned at all, but like this is fascinating to me because Yuengling is this weird example of a thing that's pretty rare in this country, wherein multiple generations of a family have the same profession. And like that's atypical here,
Yeah.
I think. And, Kenny Albert, obviously he's followed in his father's footsteps. Were either of you inclined to do what your parents did? I mean, I assume they didn't.
My goodness.
That's a good question.
I mean, I've heard them referenced on the show a few times. But,
Randman, if you're listening, I will have to break it to you that I was never inclined to be a landscaper nor a logger. I'll drink a lager.
Amber?
Yeah. But I'm not going out into the woods, Randman, and I'm not landscaping anymore. I used to work for him, and it sucked. It was hard labor, but I love you, Dad. What about you?
Yeah, this is a great question. It's
feel
something
like,
I haven't
that's
thought
your
about in a
ballpark.
while, but yeah. My dad played football in college, so I think I wanted to be like him in that respect. But he was a technology teacher in the school district. That I don't think I ever wanted to be. But yeah, the sports thing for sure. But beyond that, not really. My brother was kind of that guy. He's doing the job now that my dad used to do. Not the exact same job, but the same role.
And he's older, right? So he got to kind of
My brother, yeah.
Oh, he staked that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Now
he
here
might
you
not
sit
mind,
doing this
but-
shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And my dad had a beer podcast. I always wanted to do that as well.
Mine too,
You
I
have
should
the old
say.
78s somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It was both of our dads doing a podcast.
Yeah, we're talking about the 5th generation of the Yuengling family.
How about you? What did your dad do?
My dad is a high school teacher,
nice.
but actually it's funny because he's done a lot of things. And I definitely both sort of did and didn't follow in his footsteps, if that makes sense. Like he was, when I was a little kid, he was a television producer, and has been in journalism in a few different fashions. And obviously I have some of that. And my dad also worked at times when I was a kid and also for some before I was born as a cook. And obviously I have a love of food. And when I was younger, thought I was going to maybe cook professionally. Very quickly learned after starting down that path that it was not for me. Preferred the part of it where you, got paid more and had to work less hard.
Yeah. Weren't getting burned by
Exactly.
grease.
Less frequently, for sure. And I've had at times thought about teaching and I mean, sort of do education as a part of my job in some fashions as well. But so, I mean, yes and no.
Yeah.
But, never, I think the thing more than anything else that I got from my dad and to some extent from my mom was sort of like that you didn't have a single, like my dad didn't do the same thing for 40 years and then retire. I mean, he's still not retired, but, he has done a number of things in my life and, more before I was born. And that I think has been the thing that's resonated with me. But, yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting because I think about, these businesses and like for the Yuenglings to have 6 generations. I mean, probably the first few, there were a lot fewer options in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And if your family had a successful business, you probably weren't like, well, what I'd really like to do is, go to art school.
Right.
But for the current generation that's in their older than us, I think in their 40s, running it now, that probably were the first generation who could have said, whatever, I want to go do something else.
Let's sell this to AB InBev.
Yeah. Or maybe, or that, I think all of I interviewed 2 of the sisters. I think all 4 of them are involved in the brewery in some fashion. I mean, the other thing true is with a business that's not that Yuengling is huge, but it's big enough that probably kind of what you're interested in doing, you can, if you're one of the Yuenglings, you can kind of be like, yeah, I'm going to do this or that. I'm not going to, I don't know that you're quite as locked into, Glock landscaping or whatever Randy called
Little Wolf
it.
Landscaping.
That's right.
Little Wolf, huh?
That's where we were actually technically from. So,
Oh, okay.
Well, I
Yeah.
was from Little Wolf. You were from
Same.
Manawa. Oh, yeah, you
No,
were.
yeah. I was about
Bullshit.
quarter mile outside the Manawa city limits.
But, yeah. I don't know. You were in Manawa.
Little Wolf
He was a
surrounds
city kid, little city
Manawa.
slicker over here.
Manawa is like totally landlocked by Little Wolf
And
Township.
and also the rest of Wisconsin.
the rest of Wisconsin.
Like the Vatican in a way. What jumped to mind was you talked about all this is I would think in a lot of cases there's a lot of pressure and potentially there's people who don't want to be in that profession and feel like they have to when something is as successful as Yuengling and Little Wolf Landscaping. But like, and so like what you were saying, your dad being kind of a Renaissance man and learning a bunch of different skills and applying them, that resonates with me. I would want my children to certainly feel like never feel like, yeah, you know what, I run I run Little Wolf Landscaping, and you're going to run Little Wolf Landscaping,
Right.
and I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
You little
did
shit, you know?
yeah,
Little wolf shit.
Yeah.
Little Wolf shit. When in the Yuengling line, like, are they still the brewers of the beer? Or are they kind of just running the company now?
I think they probably have someone. I mean, this is a good question that I'm just going to kind of pull the answer to out of my ass. So
Please,
apologies.
you're on Cold Cans Podcast.
Yeah,
That's what we do.
No other kind of answer is allowed. I suspect that they have a large brewery staff. It's, I mean, at a brewery of their scale and others, like someone has the title of head brewer, but like, lots of different people are involved in making the beer in any given batch. So yeah, I don't think that they're, generation one, whatever DG Yuengling or whatever his initials were. I'm sure he brewed the beer. I don't know at what point the brewery got large enough that they had either other people working with or just taking over the brewing operations. But yeah, I mean, I think, the thing about it still is that they've at least been able to keep it going, within the family in some capacity for that amount of time. Cause I think that's, that again, you're right that maybe with a successful business like that, it's a little more compelling. And, again, I've talked to, a lot of winemakers in Europe and stuff like that, where you often have these, generations, even, 6 or more. And I think they're there where it's also often connected to a vineyard and a piece of land. And there is a certain way in which those people are often raised into it. They're working in the vineyard or in the winery from the time they're a child. Mm-hmm. You may not be able to escape that to some extent, but there's also, I think, a lot of just pride in that kind of venture to be like, whether you're a Yuengling or a whatever, brewer and a winemaker or vineyard owner in France or Spain or whatever, it's often your family's name on there, and it's meaningful to have.
You want that,
yeah, to kind of carry that forward. But there are also lots of examples of in Europe and other places of kids being like, you know what, I don't want to do this. I'm not interested in living in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Right.
Working really hard to make a small amount of wine. I want to go live in Paris or Rome or wherever I want to, or move to the United States or start a podcast. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, in the grand scheme of like human existence, that's a pretty new phenomenon, right? That you could just go do whatever the hell you wanted, that your parents and their parents did before. Like that
Built
was
this institution.
Exactly. You just had, or not even an institution necessarily. Like if you're all farmers or whatever, you just kind of had to farm because there was nothing else to do.
Sure.
That's somewhat of a more recent thing. I mean, especially even like us living across the country from central Wisconsin, like that's pretty new even from that area. Obviously people have been doing it.
Just the possibility of that is fairly
so not
recent.
even if you're turning your back on what was otherwise a successful business, but just even the ability to like, oh, there's these other jobs out there that I can go and do.
But I think that's fundamental to, this is going to get like a little bit, I don't know, whatever. But like, I think that specific thing you're talking about, Nick, is fundamental to understanding something about the American identity. Because that is the thing that I think, whether consciously or not, so many people left Europe in particular, but in the past, but also have left lots of other places more recently to come here for that very idea that you could strike out on your own. And whether that was, moving west into frontier lands, or even now just being like, I can reinvent myself. There's this incredible history and tradition in this country of people doing that. And sometimes to really, horrible ends, but there is this idea that here, in a way that was not true in a lot of Europe, especially in the past, where, not only were people, situations like people were farmers, but there was, often the job your parents did was a job you were constrained by class and by society. You had to do it. If your dad was a chimney sweep, you were going to be a chimney sweep.
You had those skills,
but also not only those were the skills you had, but like you were not allowed to do something else. You could not rise above your station. And like, and so, here I think we've prized, maybe almost to some extent too much, that idea that each of us in a successive generation can become whatever we want to become. And that, as someone who has who's a parent himself now, it's interesting to think about these things because, you have a different perspective, or at least for me, I have a different perspective when I have a kid, and think about, I don't want to tell my son what to do. I don't want to tell him what, professionally or whatever, but I also want him to feel as if he isn't obligated to do something different than me just so that he can feel like his own person. Right.
Sure. So what I'm hearing you say is Yuengling is a run as a monarchy and is as un-American as it gets. Is that sort of what you're getting at there?
I think that's a one way to interpret what I said. Sure.
However, in 1829, when it was founded by a German immigrant who set off to reinvent himself, and then ultimately then created an institution 6 generations now and running. And in 2021, we're seeing kind of the seeds of change.
Sure.
The seeds of change we're seeing because they're expanding and are partnering with Molson Coors in Texas for not just distribution, to have Molson Coors brew Yuengling. So there's a little bit of, I guess, potentially somebody deciding that they're going to hand off at least that little portion of this. Maybe that's in the spirit of growth, but
yeah, that's the American spirit part. They're growing.
Another American thing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we figured out the American ethos here and now can understand pretty much anything that comes our way with regards to politics.
And especially our relationships with our fathers.
I have that figured out now.
What else are podcasts for but figuring that out? You can either start a podcast or go to therapy.
And the healthier way to do it is to start a podcast.
Yeah. Speaking of healthy, you guys are not eating enough of those cheese curds.
I flipped it on mute and ate.
I did. I just did. Yeah. We got to get it into the middle of the plate, the common plate.
I'm going to be eating them by the fistful.
Now, Joe, we have had this little surprise staring us in the face here. I want to make sure we don't skip over that. I'm very intrigued.
Are you boys intrigued?
Yeah. One of my lovely wedding napkins is sitting over it.
Yes. Well, it's kind of like a little fun reveal I'll do where I'll pull it off as a waiter would to a dish with a big tin
called a cloche.
As a waiter would do with a cloche. I'll pull off this. Now, let me give you a little backstory before you take this picture, Nick.
Oh, boy.
I went to my doctor the other day, and he said, Joey... He said, Joey, I love you very much. But every time you come in here, every time you have had too much alcohol, and too much alcohol is bad for your body. Your body's going to suffer at this, your liver, so on and so forth. And if you come in here with too much alcohol one more time, I'm going to wring your little neck, is what he said to me.
Wow.
So I said,
I'm telling you need to get a new doctor.
Well, we'll talk about that. But so I said, Doc, what do I got to do? What do you want me to fucking do, Doc? And he said, I have a prescription for you. And what I'm about to unveil is exactly what he prescribed. This is Surreal Brewing Company's non-alcoholic Kolsch, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, I want to point out that Joey is currently wearing an Athletic Brewing Company hat. So this is some
doctor's orders.
I mean, but this is also some I don't know if this is Joey cheating on Athletic Brewing, Joey just having an sort of, a sort of agreement, but
Surreal Brewing.
I gotta say, I kind of didn't think I would ever be drinking a non-Athletic Brewing Company. Don't you guys have a promo code?
We here at Cold Cans love Athletic Brewing. Enter promo code ColdCans25 at checkout for 25% off your first order.
Now, is that promo code still active, Joe?
You can sign up for new emails if you've used it once already. All right. This, though, I found in our local PCC.
Wow.
Pacific
Big PCC guy.
Co-op? Community
Puget
Co-op?
Consumer Co-op.
Okay, there it is.
Those of us who are from this area might know that.
You might
be aware
member.
that we are living next to Puget Sound.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't
Hard to believe. That big body of water out there to the west.
Sound of water. I've heard a sound of music.
Sound of mind. Something your doctor's never said to you.
Certainly
How is
not.
It?
I really like it, and I want you guys to try it. You certainly don't have to drink the whole thing. But I think we've seen an expansion of the... two poor reactions from the get-go.
Beer seltzer is what it tastes like to me.
We've seen expansions in the non-alcoholic space. Athletic has been there. The Heineken NA is always available. And I like having a beer during the week. I do not like drinking alcohol every night of the week. Unfortunately, the pandemic got me a little bit in that groove. And so I decided if I have a craving for a cold beer on a Tuesday, I'm going to start trying more NAs. And that'll scratch that itch and I won't feel, so bad. And,
that's smart.
And this has been a new option that's cropped up. The last time I went to PCC, I saw it for the very first time. Surreal Brewing, I thought was a good name for an NA brewery. And the most important point, 17 calories. Most NA beers have a lot more than that.
Yeah, you can tell.
Now we have a hand
Yes,
up.
I agree. The calories sometimes relate to flavor, I would say, Joe. So it does not shock me that this has 17 calories in it.
Really? I thought this had flavor, and now I'm drinking it after this Yuengling, and it does not. But
I mean, it's let's say like you've seen this thing in the NA space that's kind of adjacent, which is like hop waters, which
Yeah.
are kind of like the idea of like, let's give you a little essence of something in essentially sparkling water. And this is more analogous to that to me than like what I would call like even the Athletic Brewing, whatever the lightest beer they have is. I forget what it's called now.
Or the Dawn or something
Yeah,
like that.
which is
that's not
probably my least favorite of their beers, just because it's a little too like this. Like there's just a little too. There's not enough there.
Run
for
Wild,
me.
is it?
No, that's the IPA.
That's
That's
the
the right.
IPA.
Yeah.
I think Golden Dawn or something is the
Something
Pilsner
Dawn.
or
I
something.
think, yeah. Forget what it is.
And it's all right, but it's I think of the beers they make, it's probably the one I would least be inclined to. And this to me kind of is in that vein of just like it's. I mean, look, this is a really tricky thing. I was actually I've done a lot of interviews with people making things in the NA space lately because it's of interest and people are intrigued by it. It's really hard to hit flavor and low calorie count. I mean, it's just true. It's just really difficult to do, even if there's no alcohol, right? Where alcohol is going to give you a certain calorie count, kind of no matter what. But alcohol also conveys flavor in addition to intoxicating us.
Yeah,
it's a really effective. A lot of flavor compounds are much more soluble in alcohol than they are in water, and that's why things that are either made without alcohol or have the alcohol removed, it's very hard to not lose all the flavor. It's why you can't just, sadly, I guess, you can't just remove the alcohol and leave everything else behind. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, okay. I can concede that there's a muted flavor here, but I will say going from Yuengling to this probably really brought that out more than when you noticed there was 3 in this 4-pack I bought because I had one the other day, and when I just cracked that thing off, I drank it and I was like, my doctor put me on the right path
Got
finally.
the right meds.
Joe,
yeah.
I think the key test here is, can you eat a cheese curd with it?
Can you pair it?
Because the cheese curd also a crucial part of health.
Pairable or
Of
bearable?
course. My doctor also prescribed homemade deep fried cheese curds last time I went in. All right, I'm going to try a big one. This is a big one.
That's a big boy you got there.
And then I'm going to pair it with the Kolsch. So I'm going to go on mute. Nick, fill time.
Go on mute. So Athletic Brewing, you mentioned the seltzer thing. Have you had their hop seltzer?
I have not. no.
Okay. I ordered a 6er of they have a grapefruit one. I think they're mostly citrusy.
Okay,
And I
makes
think
sense.
for someone who likes hops, they would be good. I didn't care for them that much. I'm not a huge hop head, as the nation knows.
You're the
malt
boy?
man.
Malt man.
Please.
You've
been a malt
grown
man
into malt man.
for like a year now.
Congrats.
But it was.
You had a malt mitzvah?
Nice. They call them like day pack or something. The seltzers.
Yeah. I haven't had them, but
those are intriguing to me along the same lines as this. Like it's not a ton of flavor, but it's refreshing at least and has a little bit of hop to it.
and for 17 calories, like my expectation is not like in that space. I just want it to taste like something, and this is definitely tastes. There's sort of essence of beer in there, which is maybe all you can reasonably expect. But if I wanted something that wasn't LaCroix or something like that, it would be an option. My holdup would probably be price, because for a 50 cent to $1 seltzer, that's one thing, but I'm imagining these cost a little more.
These were more, yeah. These were probably like $9 for a 4-pack, so it's the price point's higher. I mean, it still pairs well. The cheese curds and beer you're really failing as a beer maker if you don't make something that pairs with a fried cheese curd. And this scratches an itch for me, although it is so light that, I would have preferred pairing it with the Yuengling. These cheese curds, though, very, very pairable. So thank you again.
Wonderful.
But I get everything you're saying. What's the old like LaCroix joke of like LaCroix taste like somebody, shouting strawberry from the other room?
Yeah.
That's kind of what this is like too. There's like a touch of Kolsch, but I kind of like it. So you guys,
that's great that you like it.
Go
Honestly.
to hell.
Your tastes are valid, Joe. Their tastes are valid,
Thanks, guys.
and I hope you can enjoy.
There's only one of you
these
said that, but
on a night where you don't want to.
I was
drink.
busy chewing.
yeah, I do enjoy it. I actually, honestly, don't know if I'll get another one, because I do think Athletic Brewing is doing a lot more interesting stuff in the NA space than this, but I gave it a shot, and I hope that Surreal Brewing Company is making other stuff, maybe add some more
I
calories.
100% agree with you, though. That is an excellent name.
It's such a good name. That's what drew me to it. I picked it up and I was
Brewing.
like, oh, that's the right way to name your brewing company if you're making NAs.
Yeah.
Their mission is to proudly brew the healthiest line of beers in the world.
Well,
So-
I have to ask, since we're in the topic of sort of beers brewed to meet some sort of health need or whatever. Nick, I couldn't help but notice you brought over a Ghostfish.
I did.
Beer, and I know I was, like all of Cold Cans Nation, very saddened to learn of your
a dark
debilitating illness, which did not debilitate you from eating some cheese curds. I noticed.
Little cheat
Or
night.
both of these
little
beers.
cheat night.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little cheat night for Nick.
Well, yeah, it's true. Or the beers. But what are there other gluten-free breweries out there, and are they any good? Because I've had some Ghostfish stuff before because they're local, but I don't know what else is out there.
Yeah, Ghostfish is really close to me, so I do like a lot of their beers. This one in particular I have is not my favorite, but they do have a good...
Well, why would you bring your favorite over to my house?
That's true, yeah. I don't want to waste
It's in the
good
back
one.
of the fridge.
Yeah, good question. I think there's a lot of people, or a lot of breweries trying to do gluten-free stuff now, and a lot of them are just sweet, which is, I think, just a factor of what they have to brew the beer with, because it's often like, sorghum and...
Rice, maybe?
Rice, yeah, exactly. Rice. So like things that just have more sugar in them naturally.
So can you drink Budweiser? Does that bother you?
We talked about that once with Bud Light.
Right. Because it's not gluten-free, but it is a rice beer. I think it doesn't really bother me.
They just sprinkle some gluten in there for fun.
Right. Yeah, they do. Yeah, it's a good question. I have been trying to avoid it exclusively these days. So I think once you start doing that, then you're much more sensitive to it once you do have some, of course. Nothing comes to mind as like a good gluten-free brewery.
Nick
though.
is becoming paler and paler as this evening wears
I
on.
pass out in the chair.
Well, do you feel like you feel not just I'm not sick anymore because I ate gluten? Do you feel any better or any different in the few months? You know what I mean? Like you feel
Yeah,
you
it's
look
a totally
good,
fair
you look
question.
great.
It's a totally fair question.
You
Well, thank you.
You look kind of hot.
That's what my doctor said to me.
Oh,
what
which
Joey's
doctor are you
doctor
going
said to you.
to?
yeah, same doctor.
I know. He always gives me your charts when I go.
To avoid getting too into it, yes, I do feel better.
Good. Get into more details.
Yeah, that was very short.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I'll say
Now we
this.
all are thinking one thing.
One thing that has gone away is like bloating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
That's
was
good.
definitely, not something I ever noticed because it was just normal to me to be like, oh yeah, eating just makes you like this. And I
Yeah.
think cutting it out completely was just like, well, you don't have to feel like.
And that's what I was
You're gonna
asking.
explode.
Yeah. Did you notice anything? Because you probably noticed like getting like sick if you ate gluten, which obviously you notice you don't get sick anymore. But was there anything that you didn't think was going to change? And that's one. That's good.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks.
You look great. We all look great.
We're all
That is
doing great.
very untrue in this corner here, but thank you.
Hey, but you know what? We're out of this damn pandemic.
That's
We're
right.
sitting in your living room. You hosted us.
I know. We're breathing each other's
That's true.
droplets and
are.
aerosols and
That's
what
what Joey
aerosolized-
put in this in this Kolsch.
aerosolized cheese
Joey's
curds.
aerosols.
It's got some Kolsch aerosols. That's about it.
But that feels good. This is
It does feel good.
have you guys felt like this happened? We're able to go out. CDC just came up straight up, said you got your vaccine, you're fine.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, I guess in my head, there was this big jubilation. There was this big, we made it. This was unimaginably difficult. And we're out the other side. And the CDC,
Citywide orgy. You thought?
I was hoping for a citywide orgy. My doctor was telling me that there was going to, he thought one was coming. But, and
Gave you meds for doxycycline and stuff, or whatever the antibiotic
Doxycycline?
is. I mean, I've never been prescribed it. Certainly,
no, what the hell are you talking about?
I think that's something you're given
Things for
for
venereal
like
diseases?
for venereal diseases. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So he preemptively gave me
Yeah.
some. Yeah. Assuming the city orgy. But there's certainly, it's been a far cry from the city. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, that you're listening to this. It's been a far cry from a city orgy. It's been kind of just like, all right. And then people are kind of like Like people at my work the other day, people were like, "Oh, we can go back to the office. What's the appetite there?" And a ton of people are, "No, I'm going to kind of keep working here." What are you talking about? And our friends have gone through a couple of things.
I can understand of not wanting to go back into an office. But
I suppose, but I don't know.
These are people who worked closely with you, right?
Yeah, your point.
No point.
But like even our friends, we've noticed it too. Like it doesn't seem like everybody's eager to run back out there, and I get that there's some hesitancy. But like I don't know, it feels like if you did your diligence this whole year and trusted the CDC as I did, which meant awful news day after day after day for 400 plus days, and I was like respecting that. Then when the good news came, it was a little bit difficult to trust for a lot of people. You know, it was not as easy to go, "Oh, good, we're out of it." They said we're out of it. We listened to them for 430 days. We should listen to them now. And I don't necessarily blame anyone, but it is a different feeling here in the end of May than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know if it resonates with either of you.
I think that's a fascinating question. I mean, I think that part of the deal is that for a lot of us who really did take quarantining and social distancing and all those things seriously, masking, etc., it was a little like you don't feel different when you get vaccinated. I mean, maybe you go have a little bit of a response. Some people obviously had more of one, but like you wake up and you still feel the same, basically. And it's a little bit, not that I don't have any, like I believe the vaccines are just as effective as they say, but it's hard when you don't kind of have like any tangible thing to grab onto where it's like, oh, now things are different. And I think part of it is like, you know, I mean, this has been said in other quarters, but like masks in particular and just the sort of like being cautious came to be so imbued with a kind, especially in a place like Seattle, you know, it was what everyone was doing. And it's like, it's been like this weird, like, you know, I noticed this a lot because I take my son out to parks and stuff like that. And, you know, he's worn a mask, you know, lots of kids his age haven't, but he was interested in it because mom and dad were wearing masks and we got some for him and he wanted to be like us, which kids at that age want. And, you know, you notice, you know, fortunately for the height of it through much of the pandemic, most of the time people, certainly adults and plenty of kids at playgrounds and stuff like that would be masked. Now, when I'm fully vaccinated, presumably many of the people who are going to the playgrounds with their kids are fully vaccinated. Sure. The kids aren't, which is its own thing. And with kids, you know, you have a different set of considerations. But I'm like trying to, like, I'm not wearing my mask as much because I want it to, like, not because I think that it was bad to mask before, but because I think there is this way in which, like, we do kind of need to start signaling to one another, like, you got vaccinated, like, you are safe. Like, like there's not a good 0% risk, but like your risk of anything serious happening is so small that like the whole point of going through all the other shit was to eventually not have to do it.
Exactly.
And like, we certainly, you know, didn't know at various points, like we could have hope for vaccines. We could have hope that they would be somewhat efficacious, but like they are so effective.
Yeah.
Like almost mind-blowingly so. That like to still kind of be like, well, like I was talking to a cousin of mine who's, you know, doesn't have kids or anything like that. And he was expressing how like, he was still like, he went out to eat with a friend and they sat outside and he was still kind of uncomfortable taking his mask off. And I was like, at this one point, this is just like your own neuroses. This isn't like a thing that is real. It's just like like your risk is like, you're more likely to get stung by a bee and die sitting outside eating realistically than you are to like,
Two vaccinated
catch COVID from someone and have it be even honestly, it's unlikely that even if you were to somehow contract the virus that you would even know.
Right.
And like, at some point, like, what are you like, you know, if you live your life without, or like, I think I said to him actually, it was like, you're going to more likely to get in a car accident driving to or from the restaurant than you ever would be to get sick from COVID now. And like in that setting. And like, I get it. I don't want to I'm not super inclined to go to a massive, you know, indoor party. I mean, I'm not inclined to go to that for a lot of reasons. But the virus is a convenient cover. But like, I would go to a baseball game and sit outside. I'm just like, there's not like, what are you afraid of at some point? It's just kind of jumping at shadows.
Yeah. Well, I think what you said earlier, Joey, about like for 400 some days they were in it. It is hard to flip that switch. Yeah. And in Seattle specifically, because that's where we live, I think there's some level of like people want to keep following the rules, like what they thought were the rules. and they want to look down on people who they think aren't following the rules. And
Sure.
there's something too about like, yes, you're almost not, you're not likely to pass it to someone, even if you're fully vaccinated, even if you're somehow infected, you'd be so asymptomatic, you're very unlikely to pass it on to someone. But it's like, people don't want to seem like they don't care about masks, right? So they want to wear the mask just so it seems outward that they care about it.
Yeah.
Even if they know internally that they don't really need to wear it for any real reason.
And there's some level of empathy there too. Then somebody doesn't have to second guess when you approach them on the street. You put one on, and you're just being respectful to others. But yeah, there's going to be a point. Maybe it is
there's
just
a lot of
slow.
factors.
Yeah,
A lot of them psychological, like you were saying.
and maybe it is just time. And by the time this time rolls around in the fall, that'll all kind of fade away. But I guess I had this romantic idea of this, citywide orgy that we were all going to be part of.
Burn your masks in the street.
Burning the masks in the street. Like my doctor told me, and then it didn't happen. But at the same time, I'm happy we are where we are. It just feels like, we went through a lot, and we're very reluctant to accept good news.
The other piece of this is like, and again, unsure to me, I think it's a Seattle or a Northwest thing to some extent. There is such a strong sense here, and even for maybe the two of you have picked up on it, not being from here even potentially, like, there is a way in which people here do not want to like show off. And I think there is a sense of like that being like, whether it's other parts of the country or especially parts of the world where like people are not being vaccinated at the same rate. Like, again, not that it matters to any of those people, whether someone in, Ballard is going out to dinner, but like, there's this idea that like, well, so like, there's a part of that I respect, and like, it's that idea of trying to be considerate of other people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a way where it becomes performative, and I kind of like, okay, but like, what good is it doing anyone for you to continue to behave as if you're not vaccinated?
Yes.
Just because like you think it's again, it's like it's a virtue signaling thing. At a point when they're like, it's one thing to signal that virtue when it I think is meaningful, and like, of course, masking when there weren't vaccines
in January,
or last May or whatever,
right?
But like now, if you're vaccinated, it is kind of like, I mean, I think the message we should be putting out is like, these vaccines are fucking awesome, and like you can go back to living basically the life you led before. I mean, maybe not in every last single way, but like, meaningfully for people who have been vaccinated, as far as we can tell, the pandemic is over.
Right.
It's not mitigated. It's over.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not saying, maybe the citywide orgy wasn't going to happen, but like, it is a little weird that there's still, there is still this, like I, see people on the street out walking their dogs wearing masks. And I mean, again, maybe some of them aren't vaccinated, although,
and maybe some people can't be. Like, there's always that. There's a section of the population there, but I think we're both hitting the same point there. Like, there's a lot of people who can be and are, and we're still like, we don't know how to feel. I don't think anybody's being malicious. I just think it makes sense, but I felt like I personally, again, I took all that advice so seriously, pessimistically for 430 days. I felt like I paid my price. And then when the good advice came, it kind of felt like I was like, all right, let's all go celebrate. And everybody's like, oh, hold on. That I don't know how to describe that more than that felt like the vibe. And maybe
this is not enough of a celebration for you?
Well, until tonight. Okay. The fried cheese curds really cemented. This is as good as a citywide orgy.
I mean, just you wait.
These cheese curds were truly lovely, and I already feel them weighing me down in the right exact way that fried cheese curds should.
It's very funny. I will tell a brief cheese curd story because you will appreciate this. So, Caitlin, when we met, extolled the virtues of cheese curds to me, and I believed her, but also was like, whatever. And
did you meet at NYU? Or
no, we met here.
Oh, you met in Seattle. Got it.
No, we have not known each other quite that long.
Okay.
And so after we had been dating for not quite a year, we went to Wisconsin. And like one of the very first things we had upon arriving in Milwaukee was were fried cheese curds, and I had them. I was like, oh, I understand. Like now I get why these matter to you, because I'd had them here, but like it just wasn't the same.
Yeah,
and
so they're really not.
I bow to the general Wisconsin cheese industry, which is a remarkable industry.
Cold Cans Nation, by and large, bows to that industry. It is remarkable.
Oh yeah. The cheese I fried myself earlier tonight, which I told you guys before the show.
What was that?
I think it was Galbani frying cheese, which is I think
square,
that's a Wisconsin.
The square things. Yeah, those are good.
It's a Wisconsin company as well.
But you didn't deep fry them, right? You just pan fried them.
Pan fry.
Pan fried cheese.
Just a little appetizer before your
just something
deep
light.
fried cheese.
Before we came on here and had some deep fried cheese. Should we take the bullet train
Let's
home?
rank it. Yeah, baby.
I didn't think you guys did this anymore.
Well, it's rank.
It's a new beer, so
drank or rank. What was our thing? But
What?
then
Yeah,
rank
it
is
was-
good.
right.
And drank is bad?
And drink
Yeah.
is bad enough that we don't want to rank it. I think before we
Yeah.
decide whether we want to rank it, we should get the non-canonical
Yes.
review.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I think that you guys have always had an interesting approach to beers of this ilk. In that, like, I think it's really hard to compare beers where Yuengling does make other beers, but frankly, if you talk about the brewery, like, I don't know, this probably accounts for 80% of their production or something. I was just pulling that number out of nowhere, but like, and that's what people think of in the same way that a lot of the other breweries you guys have ranked. That's kind of where the thing that they're known for, and so what my feelings about this are going to be colored by my own my nostalgia for it to some extent.
Absolutely.
And I think that's all, valid. I think to me, where, as we talked about way at the beginning, where Yuengling a little bit sets itself apart is it is a different flavor profile than most of the other kind of regional-ish iconic beers. It is not, you would never blindly mistake this for, any of the beers that you guys discussed, because it has such a different flavor profile. And I happen to like it quite a bit. And I think it fits comfortably in with, whether it's, your various light beers, your, Lineos, et cetera, right? Like it's of that genre. And so, where you place it maybe depends a little bit on your own history or lack thereof with it. But I think it is in that vein for sure.
Fair point.
I agree with it, even without the history. I can feel the history. You can tell that
It's a
people
cool history.
enjoyed this. Yeah, in their
And I like that it's, up till now anyway, specifically an East Coast thing. That's the only time I'd ever had it previously, so I was connected to those travels. I think that's cool as well.
when I used to travel for work, this was the beer I would take to my hotel and drink by myself.
Perfect.
A 6-pack.
Turn on HBO or Sports Center.
Yeah, and you decompress, and I'd get a 6-pack. I was there for a few nights.
Now,
leave a couple in the room because I couldn't get through them all.
Sure, that's a tip.
Yeah, that is the only tip I'm leaving. No, I always tip the house.
Now, if there were 2 beds, 2 queens, would you eat and drink in one bed and sleep in the other?
Yeah, I've heard this theory. I use it as the closet. I unpack on the other bed, and then all my socks and everything are out and about. But then I'll just eat and drink in the bed. That's kind of like one of the things I like
under
about
the sheets. Yeah,
being kind of alone there in the hotels. I can don't have
Be a
to like
nightmare.
do the dishes or whatever. I can just sleep in the bed with the food. I think we should rank it because I think there's just an
this is rank.
absolutely. Yeah, this is absolutely rank, and there's a clear.
There is a clear. It's like we set it up for it.
Yeah, we set it up for it. I think we're both on the same wavelength. We could 3-2 on it, but I know exactly what number you're going to say because I'm going to say the exact same number.
Wow.
I'm 100% sure. And
3.
I'll give you a little hint just to make sure we're on the same page. It's going to be rip and replace. We're not going to push the 100 down.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm okay
shit,
with
then
that.
we're not
I'm
probably-
okay with that.
Then we're probably not doing the same thing.
Oh, really?
Because you clearly know what I was saying if you did. So you fucking idiot. Just
3, 2, 1,
34. You did know the whole time. I knew you knew.
No, I just wasn't gonna rip and replace. I was just gonna be bump it down. But
No,
I like
fuck
rip and
Drink
replace.
Wisconsin
No,
as
it's
an
perfect.
organization.
It's perfect.
If they made it this far into this episode, you're going to get another Instagram comment.
Bring it on, Drink Wisconsin.
Come down to Five Serve Forum and
send
fight
Marv
us.
Albert after you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because we got Kenny Albert on our side, baby.
Does Kenny have a trademark?
I don't think he does.
No?
He has far fewer kind of signature calls the way that Marv does.
Okay, he'll get there.
Can you get Kenny on our show? Or
Yeah, call up Kenny.
He only appears on the Vine Bear podcast.
damn it, I have heard him a few times. Zach, thanks not only for taking the time to be on the show, but for hosting us.
You should really thank my
Very
wife.
much.
And yes,
Thank you, Caitlin.
She fried
and-
the cheese. I just sat here and drank beer.
That's true.
And Willett for his
Yeah.
presence throughout.
He's zonked.
taking a little bit of a nap on the couch now.
He had a
but
few Yuenglings before you got here.
yeah, it was lovely end to end.
Yes, and thank you for procuring this East Coast beer for us.
Yep.
It's lovely.
I all I had to do was open my door and accept the UPS shipment, but you're very welcome. It was a lot of work.
No finer tradition for Cold Cans Nation than shipping beer either UPS or USPS or FedEx. And we're waiting on a shipment of beer, I think, for one.
We'll see.
Anyway, thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure.